Hi, I'm Paul Woodadge, and this is Conflict on Camera, a new series for World War II TV where we examine famous or perhaps less famous photos from World War II and look at the backstories behind them. In today's show, the photo features my great uncle. He's the handsome chap standing behind me there. Lieutenant Cyril Rand was an officer in C Company, the 2nd Battalion Royal Ulster Rifles, who landed on Sword Beach on June 6, 1944. He was actually from West London. He was my grandmother's brother. The backstory is really quite simple. It was taken in Caen on July the 9th, 1944 by a war correspondent. The photo was taken by Herbert W. Warhurst for the Times. Its official number is WN5068. The photo depicts two British soldiers standing on a pile of rubble in Caen, the town in Normandy that was the objective of the British 3rd Division landing on Sword Beach. Standing on the left is Sergeant Robert John Rainey. He's got a Sten Mark II and he's wearing an army jumper. In 1945, months after this photo was taken, he was awarded the military medal. To the right is my great uncle Cyril. There's a couple of details about the photo I'd like to point out. One is my great uncle's rank pips were just squares of black felt. Within the regiment, there wasn't enough official rifle regiment black and green pips to go around, so my great uncle simply used squares of black felt. The helmet, by the way, is downstairs in my war cupboard. It was repainted a rather nasty gloss green after the war, but I do have that original helmet sitting downstairs. To convey the story, I'm going to read from my great uncle's unpublished manuscript that he wrote about his time with the Royal Ulster Rifles in World War II. The account covers the whole of the advance into Caen, but I'm going to pick up as they approached the city centre. As we descended towards the town, it was almost impossible to identify roads and tracks. The whole area resembled a vast moonscape, with trees, abandoned vehicles, and what had once been houses covered in thick layers of dirt and masonry dust. And overall, apart from sporadic bursts of fire, reigned a strange, eerie silence. Several German staff cars were lying around in grotesque positions, half buried in rubble, but there were no signs of life. As we drew nearer to the centre of the town, those of the enemy who had withdrawn during the bombing began to make an appearance. Although one felt that their heart was not in it, isolated pockets of snipers and machine gunners were encountered, but these were dealt with without too much trouble. Our supporting tanks were still unable to find a way through the streets, nor could we call upon the support of our own anti-tank platoon, who were experiencing the same difficulties as the tanks. Not that this was a matter of great concern at the moment, as the Germans were obviously experiencing similar problems. So, picking our way through the ruins as best as we could, alert for mines, we arrived that afternoon in the centre of the town. It was pitiful to see what had been the main shopping area completely gutted. Assisting the RAF in this destruction had been the powerful guns of HMS Rodney. I came across a very old lady wandering through the rubble. When she saw me, she approached, babbling quite incoherently, and broke off a piece of bread from the hard baguette which she was carrying, insisting that I should eat it. Unaware of the food situation in the town, I politely refused, causing her to become even more agitated. Still refusing, I remarked in my rather indifferent French how sad it was to see the town in this condition, whereupon she broke into almost insane laughter, rather like a cackle, and was still laughing as she made off down the rubble-strewn street. I thought afterwards that she had probably come from Le Bon Sauveur convent, whose nuns cared for the mentally sick, and which had suffered so much damage that many of the patients who had not become casualties were able to wander out into the ruined town. Mines and booby traps, when laid indiscriminately, unlike tactical minefields laid in large quantities to deter an attack by tanks, are not placed in order to inflict a large number of casualties, but rather to slow down the momentum of advancing troops, causing them to move slowly and more cautiously. They can also have an adverse effect on morale. These are circumstances in which it is necessary to push through regardless of casualties. But in the situation prevailing in Caen, we could afford to be rather more careful. Leading a section over rubble towards St. Pierre Church, I noticed we were being followed by two cameramen wearing war correspondents' uniforms. Whilst one or two of these gentlemen were sometimes very tedious, wanting to get in on the action when there was no action to get into, there were the official War Office accredited photographers and correspondents who never hesitated to visit the front in order to get good copy or a good photograph. As I was more intent on searching for snipers, I took little notice of what they were doing, but I was quite astounded, and I must admit rather pleased, to discover in our next consignment of national newspapers 2 papers containing a photograph of my platoon sergeant and I standing on a pile of rubble outside a ruined chemist's, Sten guns at the ready and looking extremely businesslike. The location where the photo was taken can still be visited in Caen today, although much has changed. There's tramways, a wider road now, but you can still see the Pharmacie de Progrès, on the corner in Caen today. The photo has been used on the cover of numerous books, and every time I see a book that uses the photo, I tend to buy a copy just because it's my great uncle. The most recent book that used it was this one here, The Liberation of Europe by Mark Barnes. It's actually a fascinating book, definitely worth getting. It covers the photos taken by the Times correspondents throughout the Normandy campaign and through into the fighting for Germany. So there you are. I'm hoping you found this little video interesting about the backstory behind that photo, about the black felt pips my uncle was wearing, and the story of how they came to be photoed as they pushed through the rubble of Caen. If you're a historian or amateur enthusiast, and there's a backstory about a World War II photo that you know and would like to share with us, please get in touch. I aim to make a lot of these shows. They'll just be short, 10 minutes, but each one explaining the backstory or something interesting about a well-known photo. You can find contact details on the World War II TV website or on our YouTube channel or on social media, Twitter and Facebook.